Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. So I'll begin with some verses from the Quran, from Surah Al-A'raf, verse 80 to 82. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ولوطا إذ قال لقومه أتأتون الفاحشة ما سبقكم بها من أحد من العالمين إنكم لتأتون الرجال شهوة من دون النساء بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وما كان جواب قومه إلا أن قالوا أخرجوهم من قريتكم إنهم أناس يتطهرون صدق الله العظيم أما بعد. So Alhamdulillah, we are going to be covering basically what is the LGBTQ movement and what does Islam say about it. Now, this is something that every single Muslim needs to know because the world has changed. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, most people didn't know what a rainbow stood for, and most people didn't know what the letters LGBTQ meant. In fact, I'll tell you, in 2008 was my first official religious director imam position in King Fahd Mosque in Culver City, in California. And they were, like some masjids, they were very short-staffed. So we were doing a tafsir class, a Quran study class, and no one was going to make a flyer. So I said, you know what? I have a background in computers. I'll make a good flyer myself. So I downloaded a Microsoft Word template, and I was searching through the template. I said, what looks nice? So I found something, and I wasn't paying attention, and it looked very nice and colorful. And I said, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to use this flyer, and I removed the wording and everything, and it said, it said Pride Parade, and I didn't know Pride Parade, whatever, Pride Parade. I deleted it, and I changed it to Quran Tafsir. We're going to start Surah Al-Baqarah, printed it out really nice, and it was sitting on the wall of the masjid for 2 weeks. And this was 2008, until somebody finally came and told me, he said, do you know that you have a rainbow-colored, tafsir flyer inside the masjid? I said, yeah, doesn't it look nice? I made it myself. It's really nice looking and everything. He goes, don't you realize, that's a Pride Parade flyer? I said, yeah, so what? Pride Parade, this parade, what Disneyland Parade, what difference does it make what parade it is? He said, no, you don't get it. That's a gay pride flyer. I said, oh, subhanallah. And I looked at it, and I didn't even realize what it was. Because in 2008, very few people, this was in Los Angeles though, but very few people knew what this even meant. They didn't know what the letters meant. They didn't know what pride meant. Pride is that you're being arrogant, it's kibr, whatever, you're proud of your school or something like that. But now, if I meet a 7-year-old, the average 7-year-old, and I ask him, what does that flag stand for? What does LGBT stand for? They can tell me what it stands for. And if I meet an 80-year-old, right, usually they have no idea what's going on. But now, someone from their grandkid's friend happens to have 2 fathers or something like that. And they're concerned about what's happening. So the world has changed. And if the world has changed, we need to also adjust the type of topics we talk about and how directly we talk about them. Now, of course, in Islam, we have haya. We still have some level of modesty. But we can't have such a level of modesty where we're not even able to address a topic that is invading our household day in and day out, and our workplace, and basically the public space as well as the private space. So that's why we're doing this topic. So what I've done is I have taken 12 major categories of questions that I usually get. I get questions from around the world because this is kind of like my specialty topic, unfortunately. I get questions from around the world from different people about this topic. So I've grouped all these questions together and put them into 12 main categories. And it's going to take about 10 hours to comprehensively cover all of this material. But we only have 45 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the super summarized, condensed version of all these categories, and then open it up to Q&A so that at least you have an understanding of what are the most common questions on this topic and what is kind of like the starting framework of how Islam addresses this. And then there's a bunch of details we could get into, inshallah. So is everyone ready for that? Okay, bismillah. So the first thing is, what does the LGBTQ plus movement teach, and what does Islam say about that? So let's look at the terms first of all. The terms are very important to understand. So the L stands for lesbian, the G stands for gay, and the B stands for bisexual. So the LGB basically all comes in one category, and that is the romantic physical attraction of somebody towards the same gender, which is outside the norm, because normally men are attracted to women and women are attracted to men. But the LGB is 3 letters which basically represent when someone is attracted to the same gender or has a relationship with the same gender. The T stands for transgender. And transgender basically means that someone is male and they want to become female, or someone is female and they want to become male, meaning they want to change their name from Aisha to Muhammad, or vice versa. They want to change their pronoun from he, him, to she, her, or something like that. They want to start dressing, if a man starts dressing like a woman, or more of that change will be injecting hormones into your body. So if you're a female and you feel like you're a male, you start injecting testosterone. If you're a male, you want to start like a female, you start injecting estrogen. And then going and getting surgeries and cutting off certain parts and getting certain parts reconstructed and all of that stuff. All of that comes into the idea of transitioning, and the T for transgender. And then some more letters are added. So there's 4 letters that started, and then they kept on adding more letters. These 4 letters only represent 2 concepts. So don't worry about how many letters get added. There's only 2 topics of discussion here, and it's very important for Muslims to understand. You can add all the alphabet. You could add A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the letters you want. There's only 2 concepts that are problematic. One of them has to do with human sexuality, physical attraction, romantic attraction. And the second one has to do with gender. Basically, are you having an attraction or wanting to have a physical relationship or a romantic relationship with someone who's not of the opposite gender? So that's category number 1. Category number 2 is somebody wants to redefine their gender from what their body actually is to some other gender. So there's 2 concepts. So then the Q was added, and the LGBTQ, and the Q stands for queer. Now there's 2 madhabs. Another madhab says questioning. There's difference of opinion among the scholars of that group, but queer is the more common, dominant school of thought. And the word queer in English, in Old English, does anyone know what the word queer means? It means weird. So queer means weird. And what they wanted to do was, it was introduced as a term to say anybody who is LGB has physical attraction not to the opposite gender, then technically they're weird. They're abnormal, because the norm throughout history, human history, has always been that men are attracted to women, women are attracted to men. So they're outside of that, so they're queer. And the T is also in the category of being weird or abnormal. So actually the Q, the term queer, is a very good umbrella blanket term for describing these people. Now they say it out of pride, and we say it out of disgust and sadness for somebody, saying you're not normal. What you're doing is something that's unnatural, and you need help. So Q is actually a pretty good term, and it's better than having a bunch of letters that you keep adding. The reason why letters keep getting added is because the more letters you have, the more it seems like there's a bunch of different minority groups all teaming up together, and it seems like politically you have a lot more power when you have a bunch of group movements, you have a bunch of groups all allying together. So it's only done for the purpose of politics. Keep on adding as many possible letters as you can to show that you're a strong minority, and then you can go and have more power. Now, what does Islam say about romantic relationships with not with the opposite gender? And what does Islam say about redefining gender from what Allah has created in your body? Islam says three things. Number one, Allah has created people into male or female. There is nothing else. So Allah either decides whether you're going to be male or you're going to be female, and He makes your body that way, and that's the way it's going to be. Number two, romance and physical relationships can only be done through the institution of marriage. And marriage can only be done between a man and a woman, not between a man and an animal, not between a man and a man, and not between a woman and a woman, or not between somebody who's trying to redefine gender and say, I'm no gender, therefore I can marry anyone else who's not a gender. And point number three is that there's something called intersex or hermaphrodite. And that is somebody who has an abnormality in their genitalia or in their body. They've been born with a defect, a deformity basically, either in their genitalia or in their chromosomes, and they're known as somebody who's either intersex or hermaphrodite, depending on how severe the deformity that they have is. And even in the case when somebody has a deformity, they're still either male or female based upon what the overwhelming majority of their body and their chromosomes and everything is going to say. So it doesn't mean that there's a third gender or a fourth gender or something. If somebody is born with an extra finger because there's a deformity, or they're born with one less finger, this doesn't all of a sudden make them a different category of a human being. There's still a normal definition of what human beings are supposed to be. And if there's a defect, that's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that doesn't mean we go and we change the conception of humanity. So in a nutshell, this is what Islam says. Point number two, category number two. What exactly does Islam say about homosexuality, about same gender attraction and relationships, and why does it say that? So I kind of addressed this in my khutbah already, and that is that, how many of you attended the khutbah, by the way? Just real quick show of hands. So most of you attended the khutbah, so you kind of have a little bit, so I don't need to repeat some parts. So the story of Prophet Lut is very clear. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that having a physical relationship is prohibited, it's shameful, and it's unnatural or abnormal, right? Whichever term you want to use doesn't make a difference, because this is something that people did not have in the past. They didn't do this throughout history, and it's something that the people of Lut did, and now people today are trying to normalize or something like that. Now, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid this? It's not enough to simply say this is haram, it's forbidden, we're not going to do it. And if you stop there and you say, well, we have no idea why. Everyone can do whatever they want, but we have no idea at all why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade this type of behavior. No, we do. If you just think about it, you say, okay, look, most people in the world, they understand that prostitution, even in places like Amsterdam and stuff where it's legal, they still understand that there's massive regulations on something like that because it's not good for society. So they put a bunch of rules in there, and generally if you ask somebody, say, hey, what do you do? If somebody, even among the non-Muslims who don't believe in God, if you ask them, what is your general thoughts on prostitution? Still, a lot of people will look down upon it and say, that's a sad thing. That shouldn't be happening, whatever it is. You ask people about incest, marrying your mother, your father, marrying your son, marrying your daughter. People look down upon that and say, that's sick. That's gross. How could somebody do something like that? You look at zoophilia. Zoophilia is the practice of people having physical relationships with animals. And yes, it happens. It not only happens in the thousands, it happens in the hundreds of thousands of people in the world do this. Now, if you ask the average person, whether or not they believe in Allah, whether or not they have any religion, say, what do you think about that? Say, man, something's gross about that. Something's not right about that. So there is still some fitrah, there's something in the natural disposition of people that they understand that these type of behaviors, They're not simply like, oh, they're just illegal or they're not allowed or they shouldn't happen. There's a wisdom behind why this is not allowed. There's something called necrophilia. Necrophilia is people having a physical relationship with the dead body, with a corpse. And people do stuff like this. And you say, well, technically, whether there's consent or not consent, whatever, people will look down upon this and say, this is disgusting. Why would you do something like that? Even if somebody said, in their will, I'm okay with that. People can do whatever they want with my dead body. You'd still say, the person who's doing that, they say he's in love. Love is love? No. It's disgusting. It's gross. There should be rules against it. This is not good for society. So when it comes to homosexuality, it used to be in the same category. You ask the average person anywhere in the world, say, what do you think about all of these behaviors? They would lump them together and say, these are all horrible social ills that shouldn't be there. This is disgusting behavior. It's gross behavior. The people who do stuff like this, there's something wrong with them and they need help. And we should not normalize this type of behavior. Why? Because it comes back down to family values. It comes back down to what's best for society. Without going into the philosophy of this, the why is really not that difficult to understand. If you can understand why you shouldn't marry your mother or your father, and you can understand why you shouldn't have a physical relationship with an animal, and why you shouldn't have a physical relationship with a dead corpse, then you should understand why men shouldn't have a physical relationship with other men. Because there's something abnormal about it, there's something wrong with it, there's something harmful for it when it comes to society. And that's the short reason. It has societal effects, it has individual effects on the mind. It's not healthy for a community. Category number 3. What does Islam say about imitating the opposite gender and why? The Prophet, peace be upon him, he said, he cursed al-mutashabbihina min al-rijali bin nisa. He cursed the people who are men and they try to imitate women, and the women who try to imitate men. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited this elsewhere in the Quran as well. So basically, in Islam, a man is not supposed to imitate a woman and vice versa. Imitation can be in clothing, for example. So a man is not supposed to wear women's clothing, and a woman is not supposed to wear men's clothing. So this changes a little bit with culture. But whichever culture you live in, some type of clothing, you can say, oh, this is like unisex clothing. Men and women both wear, it's totally normal. But some type of clothing is very specific for men, and some type of clothing is very specific for women. So if I say, for example, in American society, suit and tie is clothing for whom? For men. High heels, clothing for women. Lipstick, women. Nail polish, women. Okay, so if a man comes along and says, but I want to wear high heels, and you find some boys doing this, and you will find some boys doing, you will find some kids or some young adults doing this, and if you haven't seen it yet, I guarantee you it's coming. There's going to be a walima party in your family where somebody's kid shows up in a dress and high heels. And in the beginning, everyone's going to be looking at him and be like, what in the heck is wrong with this kid? This Ali kid walked in with a dress and high heels and lipstick on to a walima where this is our family event. But what's going to happen is, after he attends 20 different functions and he keeps on getting invited, people will be like, oh, we know Ali, he does that. And it starts to become normal. It starts to become desensitized. And you're like, yeah, he does that. So we need to be very cautious. This is not just some cultural thing. This is something that's coming directly from Islam. And it's so strict that the Prophet, peace be upon him, this is an authentic hadith narrative in Sahih al-Bukhari. The Prophet, peace be upon him, he didn't say this is not a good thing. He cursed these people. He said, Allah curses the people where men try to imitate women and women try to imitate men. So when it comes to this type of behavior, it is 100% forbidden, and we should understand that. There's imitation in clothing. There's imitation in voice, in your mannerisms. So if a guy starts speaking with such a softer voice like a girl, on purpose, and they're trying to do that, or starts making gestures like normally women would make those type of gestures, right? Like in some Arab cultures, they do the whatever that thing is, right? Forgot what it's called. What's it called? Does anyone know? Huh? Zaghrut. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So doing that, like if men generally don't do that, right? This is the women thing doing it. If in that culture, this is something that women do, not men, then the men should not be trying to imitate that and saying, yeah, I want to be part of that because it's cool because women are doing it. There is a differentiation between the genders when it comes to those things. If somebody naturally has uh, Allah has made their tongue in such a way where that's the way in which they articulate letters. And they're not trying to do it on purpose, but that's just the way they act. So some maybe when the way that they walk, the way that they walk or the way they conduct themselves happens to resemble a little bit of femininity in that culture, they're not responsible in the sight of Allah. But the scholars say, even though they're not responsible, they should put some effort into trying to undo that behavior and trying to push themselves into conforming with the gender that is manifested within their culture. So you adjust a little bit about those things, okay? And now, why does Allah forbid that? Well, there's two reasons. Number one is that if you are trying to imitate the opposite gender, you're trying to change or adjust the way that Allah has created you. Allah has either made you male or Allah has made you female. If you don't like that and say, no, I want to dress like a female, I want to imitate this, I want to imitate that, you're not happy. You're ashamed with the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made you. That's a disrespect to the Creator, number one. And number two, there is a certain type of order within society. Being able to differentiate between a man and a woman plays a role in keeping the fabric of society within a certain confines, within a certain framework. So it's very important to not break that for the good of society as well. Category number 4. Is it possible that Muslims have misunderstood the story of Prophet Lut, as some Muslims are claiming? Right? I addressed this in the khutbah, but the answer is it is highly, highly unlikely. Why? Because the verses are in the Quran. The verses are very clear about Prophet Lut, and there's 3 main points to reference. Number 1, Prophet Lut was addressing the people, and he said, you are men who are desiring other men instead of women. He clarified exactly what was the problematic behavior that they were engaging in. Number 2, he said nobody else has done this before in history. The theory that Prophet Lut was criticizing rape is a very weak theory, extremely weak theory, because rape was known in other parts of the world prior to this. Prophet Lut would not be saying you're doing something that nobody else has done before. Every civilization has engaged in other things like prostitution and rape and gambling and alcohol and those things. This is something unique that people have not seen, that was commonly practiced. So why would he say nobody has ever done this before? They've done it before. And lastly, he offered his daughters or the women of the village to do what? To be married or to be raped? If you believe that Prophet Lut offered his daughters or the women of the village to be raped, what are you saying about the Prophet? A horrible thing, a horrible slander against a messenger of Allah. So these are the 3 points. And if you want to read more, there's a fantastic article by Brother Mubin Vaid. It's called The Curious Case of Scott Kugel. And you can find it on Muslim Matters, and you can find it published in one of the journals. It's a 45-page paper where there's somebody who wrote an entire book trying to argue that Muslims misunderstood the story of Prophet Lut. His name is Scott Kugel. I don't know, maybe he's around here somewhere, or lives around this area or something like that. He wrote an entire book. The refutation, it's 45, 50-page refutation by Brother Mubin, responded to every single point in there. I recommend, if you're interested in that subject, you check that out. He's done a fantastic job thoroughly going through the entire thing and responding to all the arguments that have come up. Category number 5. Can gender be changed? Right. So today, people teach that gender is fluid. If your kids go to public school, even if they go to kindergarten in California, they're going to be taught that gender is something fluid. You can change it whenever you want. You can feel like you're one gender today, you could change another different gender tomorrow. So the question is, can gender be changed? Can there be more than two genders? And what about intersex? How do you explain that? So historically, your body has always determined what your gender is. Throughout history, people understood this is a male, this is a female. This is not something that you need to go to into a country and you'd be like, hey, everyone, let me teach you what a gender is. Everyone understood this. Mom is a male and dad is a female, and dad is a male, mom is a female. See, I'm already confused now. Just visiting Silicon Valley, and this is what happens. No, I'm just kidding. So it's like in the air, you know. So this was clear to people. So your body would determine, you could just tell, a little child can tell, right? So now what happens is, like, you know, a little child goes into kindergarten, and, you know, I have a story of, you know, one girl goes into a kindergarten and the teacher says, now tell me your name and your pronoun. So one little girl is there, her name is like, you know, Asya or something like that. So my name is Asya. He says, okay, and tell us what gender are you? She's like, can't you see that I'm a girl? 5-year-old. Because she has a natural fitrah. This is what kids normally understand. You don't need to explain to them. They know that they're female. They know that they're male. It's not difficult to understand. So then when there was some confusion, they said, okay, look at your genitals. We can look at the genitals of the people and figure out, hey, someone has a penis, they're a boy. Someone has a vagina, they're a girl. And then they said, but there are some people who have some abnormalities inside of their body. So they said, okay, since science has advanced now, we can look at the gonads and we can see if they have ovaries or testicles on the inside, then that will be one of the determining factors of whether someone is male or female. And then science advanced even more, and we realized that there are chromosomes inside the nucleus of every single cell. And there's either XX or XY chromosome. And if there's a Y chromosome, then that means the person is going to be male. And if there's no Y chromosome, then this is a female. And that became a differentiating factor. But what happened is, in 1965, there was a psychologist by the name of John Money, and he was at Johns Hopkins University Hospital. And this is around the time where these gender modification surgeries began. And the idea that gender is a social construct, it's whatever is in your mind, whatever you think you are, whatever other people think you are, that's the meaning of gender. That's where it started to develop in the 1960s. Fast forward to 2010. Every single dictionary has changed. Webster's Dictionary, Oxford Dictionary. Every dictionary that's published now in the English language has changed the meaning of gender. So if you look in the year 2000, gender had a completely different meaning. It was synonymous with the word sex. And now the meaning of gender has a completely different meaning. It's how you feel on the inside and what your gender expression is going to be. So the dictionary definition of gender changed around 2010, 2012. Then bathrooms started to become changed. So it used to say male and female, and then the bathroom started saying all gender or any gender or whatever it may be. And now, 2023, this year, Wikipedia lists that there's 107 genders. And they said, we are going to keep on expanding this list as we go along. So this is only temporary. We've only hit 107, but we're going to keep on upping it. One of those genders is genderless. And the another gender is omnigender. Genderless means you have no gender. Omnigender means you have every gender that exists. So you have all 107 of them, which basically means that the word gender has absolutely no meaning whatsoever, because it's a useless. If a word has no definition, a dictionary is supposed to define things. If you can't define something and it means anything you want it to mean whenever you want it to mean it, then it has no definition whatsoever. So that's what's happened, right, in terms of gender. So can gender be changed? Depends on what you mean by the word gender. If you mean gender, that there's a male and female, which is what Islam teaches, which is what everyone throughout history has understood, then no, gender cannot be changed. Can there be more than two genders? No, there cannot be more than two genders. What about intersex? Intersex is people who were born with the type of deformity, and they're still either male or female, depending on what deformity they have in their body. So this is what Islam says regarding that. And I can't get into more detail, but there's a lot more detail. Category number 6. Is same gender attraction forbidden? Is gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria, where you think you are a different gender? In your mind, you think you're something else. Is that forbidden in Islam? Is it haram to think that, to have those feelings? And in Islam, the answer is very simple. Feelings and desires are not intrinsically haram. People have all sorts of strange desires. If you have a feeling that I'm so stressed out, I feel like I want to kill myself, suicide, it's not haram to have the thought and then you stop it. But doing it is forbidden. It's haram in Islam. Suicide is haram in Islam. So there's a difference between a feeling and a thought. And that's very important for us to differentiate. So if somebody is attracted towards someone of the same gender, that's not intrinsically haram. But if they say, I don't care what Allah says, I don't care what Islam says, I'm going to go do it because I'm in love with this person, then the action itself will be haram. Same thing, if somebody thinks that, hey, I don't think I am this gender, I think I'm trapped in a wrong body or something like that, that's not the feeling itself. We'll talk about why that happens. That's not intrinsically haram. But if someone says, well, because I have these feelings, I'm going to start cross-dressing, I'm going to change my name from Ali to Fatima, or vice versa, that is haram. That is forbidden. So that is the difference. Is very important for us to understand that. And when you encounter someone, understand to learn the difference between the two. Category number 7. What advice would I give to people who are experiencing these feelings? There are Muslims in the world, and there are non-Muslims in the world who have this feeling of being attracted, a man being attracted to a man, or a woman being attracted to a woman, or something like that. Or there are people who have these feelings of, I think I'm trapped in the wrong body. What's my advice to people who are experiencing some of these feelings? Okay. Well, first of all, if you're a Muslim, you have to realize that you have two choices in front of you. Choice number 1, you accept that Allah is testing you with some desires that you need to control. People go through all sorts of tests in life. Allah can test you with being in a war zone. Allah can test you with poverty. Allah can test you with depression. Allah can test you with problems in your family. Allah can test you with so many different things. Allah can test you with being attracted to your next door neighbor's wife who's already married to your best friend. And you're like, but that's the woman of my dreams. Well, sorry, she's already married, so you cannot even consider her. So you can have all these tests. Allah can test a college student, goes out and is sitting in a university, and he has the most beautiful girls all around him, and every single day he's tempted. And his parents say, we're not going to allow you to get married, and you just simply have to wait and keep on fasting every other day, like Prophet Dawood. That's what you're going to have to do to control your desires. That's a huge test. So you can either say, you know what, Allah is testing me with these feelings and this life situation, or you can choose the other one, and that is, there's an LGBTQ plus identity movement that is coming and waiting and telling you, if you desire something and if you crave something and if you have some feeling, embrace that feeling and do exactly what you feel like doing. And we'll give you money, we'll put you in the newspaper, we'll help you, promote you, and say, look, we have a openly gay Muslim, trans Muslim, and we'll give you all the love and comfort and hugs and everything. We'll welcome you 100%. And the other option is, when you resist the temptation for Allah, sometimes you'll go and tell some people in your family or your Muslim community, and they're going to make fun of you and they're going to call you names because they don't understand how to deal with you. And they're going to say, you're sick, man, get away from me, I don't want to hang out with you. So you don't have the support, but you're doing it for Allah. Here you have the support, but you're following the whispers of shaitan. You have two choices in front of you if you're having these things. And what's going to happen is that in Islam, your desires do not identify who you are. So if you get angry, you don't say, I identify as an angry Muslim, right? Your desires don't identify you. Don't allow your desires to become your identity, number 1. Number 2, some desires are allowed. If you're craving dessert, cheesecake or something like that, you're allowed to go and have some. Just don't eat too much. It's going to be bad for your body. Some desires you're not allowed to do because they're bad for you and they're bad for society. So if you are interested in your next door neighbor's wife, or if you are interested in some corpse or some animal or something like that, this is not a good desire and you cannot act upon that. You simply have to control yourself. Some desires you're allowed to engage in, some desires are not good. You're not allowed to engage in them. You can't drink alcohol, you can't do drugs, you can't do this, you can't do that. So don't have this new mentality of, if I feel something and if I have a craving for something, then automatically I must do that craving because I have that. That's my authentic self. That's not your authentic self. So politics and culture affects you. And this behavior has become normalized because there's a massive overrepresentation in the media. Disney characters are now being shown as gay and being trans. You have Arthur cartoons, you have children's cartoons, you have children's books in libraries. And what's going to happen is they try to convince you that, you know what, these feelings are normal, they're perfectly fine to act upon. We invent any pronouns that you want. You can define yourself. Nobody can tell you what to do. But the answer is, if you're a practicing Muslim, you realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing you with these things, you resist the temptation and you try to work on yourself and get yourself closer to Allah. There's also a few other points to remember. There is no biological basis for having a gay gene. This was all disproven. There's so much research, but I don't have time to get into it. But basically, there is a potential for you to get help if you go to the right sources and the right people. People are trying to tell you that there is no therapist who can help you. There's no way you can ever reverse this condition. There's no way you can control these feelings because it's an authentic part of you. If you research properly and you read well, you'll realize that this is not true. There are people who can help you. There are ways that you can help control those desires or even reverse those desires, and it works for many people. But the LGBT movement is stopping access to that because that is against their agenda. So you do your research, check out a podcast called Away Beyond the Rainbow, email me for more resources, and you can actually get some help, inshallah. Do not come out and reveal your sins and say, I'm doing this haram thing and I want everyone to know I'm proud of this. But if you're going to come out to tell your friends, say, hey, I'm struggling with this, I need some help, that is allowed. That is perfectly fine. Should Muslims support LGBTQ rights? And I put the word rights between parentheses. The short answer is no. Because LGBTQ rights does not mean LGBTQ rights. LGBTQ rights means LGBTQ normalization, queer normalization within society. So words are very important. If queer people were an oppressed minority that people are picking on and they're beating them up and all of that stuff, we say, listen, man, what they're doing is gross and what they're doing is not good for society, but we shouldn't be kicking them and bombing their nightclub or something like that. We shouldn't be doing that. We could say, hey, we want to stop the discrimination against these people. They shouldn't be bullied. So you make an anti-bullying coalition against anybody. Anyone we disagree with, anti-bullying coalition, no problem. But many people are being tricked into saying, if you don't support LGBTQ rights, then you're supporting the bullying of a group of people that's marginalized. And that is not true. Don't be tricked. That is not what it means. What it means is that we're trying to normalize LGBTQ queer behavior within society, and not only normalize it, we're going to make sure it becomes the dominant dogma and religion and ideology pushed upon everyone throughout society. Which is why the next question is, should Muslims remain neutral or should they actively oppose LGBTQ ideology? And the answer is, we should actively oppose this ideology. Why? Because this is not 1960. In 1960, it wouldn't have been a big issue. You have this Dr. John Money sitting in John Hopkins Hospital or doing his own little crazy radical theories, but the rest of the world was not affected by this. The majority of the country was not affected by this. People were doing whatever in their gay nightclubs or something like that, didn't affect anyone else. But now the world has changed. It's being pushed upon every single person. There is a bill that is being passed, trying to be passed. It just passed one round of the House, and they're trying to get it passed into law, where if a 7-year-old says, I'm trapped in the wrong body, I'm changing my gender, and if one of the parents says, I am not going to accept that you're changing your gender, they will strip custody away from the parent of a 7-year-old, because that's a type of child abuse if you don't affirm your child in what they want. So a child cannot get a tattoo until they're like 16 or 18. They cannot buy cigarettes. They cannot buy alcohol, but they can change their gender when they're 7 years old. So this is the insanity that is happening right now, and it's being passed. And California is one of the biggest issues here. So yes, Muslims need to actively oppose LGBT ideology. So then the question comes, isn't that like a form of discrimination or oppression against people? And the answer is no. When somebody calls you a transphobe, it's a bullying tactic to keep you quiet and say, stay quiet, don't say anything, because they're going to say you're this and you have hate and you don't accept love. We promote love and you promote hate. This is not hate. We promote freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. And these people actually promoting hate. They're promoting hatred of anyone who believes in any basic family values. Anyone who's not willing to accept the LGBTQ agenda, they're hated against. So don't fall into this idea of, oh, I don't want to be homophobe. I don't want to be a transphobe. I don't want to disrespect anyone. You're not. You don't want to disrespect anyone, but you assert your right confidently as a Muslim who says, I believe in these values, and I'm not some minority Muslim. The entire world history of the whole humankind history is with me. So I'm not crazy. You people are the ones who are crazy, and I at least assert my right to say what I want. Then the last question on this category is, don't we believe in freedom? We enjoy freedom in this country, and I've heard some Muslims say this recently. We enjoy freedom in this country. Why are we trying to stop the freedom of other people in this country? This is a trick of an argument. Freedom actually has no meaning. Are you free to marry your mother in this country? No, it's illegal. Are you free to have a relationship with, can you marry an animal right now? People try to marry, someone married her dolphin, right? Someone who married a dolphin, one guy married his dog, another person married their cat. One girl, she identified as a cat and went to school and asked the school to have a litter box installed in the bathroom because she's a cat. And the school rejected. And they said, well, this is discrimination because my daughter identifies as a cat and she needs a litter box to go to the bathroom. And I don't know if they granted it to her or not, or whatever. But the point is, in the beginning, they said no, because there's no freedom for doing whatever you want in society. You can't walk into a restaurant naked. You can't. There are rules in society. So this argument about, well, we have freedom, we give everyone freedom. No, there has to be some level of morality that we advocate for. And there's nothing wrong with us advocating for that while also demanding the right to practice our religion. Next question. Advice to someone who has a friend or a family member who's claiming to be queer. So you have someone in your family and says, well, I'm gay, or I'm trans, or I'm in the wrong body, or whatever it is. Well, the first thing you do is you ask them very clearly, which category are you in? Are you in the category who says, I'm having these feelings and I'm struggling and I need help and I don't want to do anything haram? Or are you in the category of saying, I have these feelings and I don't care what you think, I don't care what Islam says, I don't care what Allah says, I'm going to do whatever I want and you better accept me? Figure out first, your family member or your friend, which category are they in? Ask them very clearly, which category are you in? If they're in this category, you say, I got your back. I'm here to support you. I'm going to do whatever I can to help you through this struggle. If they're in this category and they're saying, you better let me into your walima, I'm going to come in with whatever I want. I'm a guy, I'm going to come in with my lipstick and my makeup and my nail polish and my dress and my short mini skirt, whatever it is, and didn't shave his legs or what, I don't know what in the world happens, right? So he comes in there, says, you must accept me. The answer is no. No, you set your barrier and say, you know what? You're still a human being up until now. You're still a member of my family, but you are only welcome when you follow the guidelines that we have set for you. So if we come to like a masjid gathering here, let's say there's a wedding here, do you think this hall is going to allow people to come in with alcohol if they're having a wedding? No. I'm pretty sure there's some rules. Even if there's no written rules, no one's going to bring alcohol to a wedding inside the masjid multi-purpose room, even if they rent it out, because that's just not what happens in this culture. So you set certain limits and you say, you follow these guidelines. And if you don't, then we can meet in the coffee shop next time, because you're still my family member. I'm not going to cut you off, but you're not welcome in our public gatherings if you're not willing to accept the very basic common dignity that we have within these gatherings. The next question: how should we interact with coworkers or friends who are queer? Can I have a queer friend? Should I use their pronouns? Right? So how do you interact with them? You try to interact with normal, with the way you interact with anybody else. Can you have a queer friend? Can you have a drug dealer friend? Right? Can you have a prostitute or a gigolo as a friend? I mean, you can have them as an acquaintance. Would they be your best friend? Probably not, because your friends affect the way in which you think. If they're telling you, you must use my pronoun at work or something like that, it's a common problem. What do you do? Well, first of all, you try your best to avoid that situation. And you say, okay, I'm just going to call you by your name, whatever you've defined your name as. I'm just going to keep on referring to, and this person said, and he said, and she said, or you don't say he, she. Michael said, and Michael did this, and Michael did that, and just leave the pronoun out. If you can't, and there's no other way, in front of them for work, whatever it is, you use the pronoun because you're pressured to do so. But outside of your circle, you don't use the pronoun. You use their biological pronoun. Why? Because you don't want to normalize that type of behavior. The more you try to change language based upon what someone else wants, you're going to change what your kids think. You're going to change what your friends think. So if you need to make an exception to the default rule, use the pronoun. Otherwise, in general, you call people what they actually are, at least in your own private circle, so that you don't normalize this type of behavior. Lastly, the point number 11, advice to institutions like masjids who have queer people attending. You have to have a dual policy. The general policy is we want to welcome all people. Don't ask, don't tell. Don't go to someone and say, hey, your lips look a little bit red. Did you put some did you put some lipstick on there? Unless it's clear cut, say, fine, whatever, man. We don't need to ask details. We don't need to investigate. It remains a private issue, because the masjid should be open for all types of people to come. If they're doing something privately, whatever they do in the comfort of their own, whatever they do privately, whatever sins they do, those sins are kept in private. But if it becomes a public issue, then the situation has changed. If somebody demands and says, I'm going to come in with a t-shirt that says we should all smoke weed, right? Say, well, this is not an appropriate t-shirt for a masjid environment. If somebody comes and says, hey, there's a Eid bazaar coming, I want to set up my table and I'm going to be selling marijuana, it's not going to be allowed. You say, but I have the right to do that. It's legal in the state. Well, you're not in the masjid environment. Say, I want to sell beer advertisements. You can't do that. Somebody says, I want to distribute rainbow flags that represent the LGBT movement because I believe in that. It's not going to happen. Somebody comes in here and says, you know what? I want to make wudu in the women's bathroom. I'm a man, but I've redefined myself as a woman, and I would like to make wudu. Is this fair to the sisters? Sister, would you like to have a biological male coming in there and making wudu? No, you don't. So this is not fair. What happens if someone demands their rights and say, well, I'm less than 1% of the population, but I don't care. The other 99.9% of people, they need to cater to my feelings, but you don't care about their feelings. That's not going to happen. So in an environment like a masjid, number one, we need to enforce Islamic guidelines of Islamic etiquette. Basic Islamic etiquette needs to be respected. And whatever people do outside, that's their personal thing. And lastly, masjids and Islamic organizations, they need to have a very good and wise legal team that they consult to make sure that they have structured their bylaws, they have structured their membership, they've structured everything so that they can prevent themselves from any type of lawsuits or controversies. They speak in a very wise manner. They're careful about what official statements they make so they don't get picked up by the publicity and the media and all of that. And lastly, When and how do you talk to your children about the LGBT movement? The reality is, in California, it depends. If you're homeschooling your kids and you're trying to shelter them, fantastic. But I'll give you an example. One of my friends, he homeschools his children. He doesn't let them hang out with any non-Muslims whatsoever. 6-year-old kid, 5 or 6-year-old kid, just takes them to the park. Kid doesn't even go to school, doesn't interact with almost anybody. Takes him to the park, and he goes in the sandbox and he's playing. 7-year-old girl comes along and starts talking to him and says, you know what gender are you? And then saying, you know what, you can change your gender whenever you want. And this kid runs to his dad, says, Baba, this girl is saying something crazy. Yes, fitra, mashallah. Girl is saying something crazy. What did she say? She said, I can change my gender whenever I want. I can become a woman if I want. He's like, get in the car, we're going home. The brother came home and he said, I did everything in my power to protect myself. The brother was like, I'm about to make hijrah to Malaysia. I'm getting out of here. He stayed anyways. The point is, you can't shelter your kids from this. There's preschool books, kindergarten books, which basically say there's a crayon. And there's a crayon, it's a blue crayon in a red wrapper. And it talks about the poor crayon didn't realize the whole time, it thought it was red, but on the inside it was actually blue. And at the end of the book, they say, you can also change your pronoun. You may actually be a girl on the inside. You may actually be a boy on the inside, but on the outside it looks the opposite. Kindergarten and preschool level books in the public libraries. So my suggestion is, every parent has to use age-appropriate language, but don't delay. Don't delay exposing your children to this. I mean, teaching your children this. Because when you teach them first, you've set a foundation for them. And then somebody else comes and tries to do some waswasa and whisper in their ear, and whatever they say, it's going to fit into the foundation that you've already set. But guess what? If they get to them first, if they get to teach your kids first, whether it's that Disney Channel movie that you put on for them or something like that, the foundation is set. And now you come and you tell them, you know what, in Islam, Allah doesn't like this behavior. They already have a foundation, and now what you said is just one little point in the foundation that was already shaped for them. Do you want to shape the foundation, or do you want to go and try to fix the rotten foundation that's already there? So that's my suggestion. I'll open it up to questions now, inshallah. The questions are going to be via laptop, remotely somehow. Okay, so what's the best way to raise children in the USA amidst this LGBTQ movement? So number one, be extremely careful about what friends they hang out with. And number two, parents don't like to hear this. Be extremely careful what videos they watch. Sadly, this really bothers me. Most parents, okay, it's hard to raise kids nowadays, I know. And the cheapest babysitter is a screen. It's a little tablet or something. You just put the kids in front of it, and they're like, it's like you're giving them crack, and they're like completely, it's like heroin, and they're just, you don't have to deal with them for an hour, and you can relax. But if you give them free reign to go anywhere they want, click wherever they want, they're going to come across some crazy stuff, and they're absorbing it like sponges. So if you're going to do that, at least limit and install parental controls, and not just parental, limit the channels that they're allowed to watch. If they're on YouTube, no, with my kids, we have a very short list of channels that they're allowed to access. So you're not going to access anything beyond these channels. And it's like, how to do some drawing art. And even the art channels I check. What kind of art are you going to be doing? You drawing rainbows? No, that channel's banned, right? You're going to, how things work. Or, the Baba Ali Kids show or something like that. Just very few channels that they're allowed to watch that the content is solid. Don't let them wander around randomly on anything they want, putting into a search box. It's going to destroy them. And be careful of the movies that they're watching as well. I teach at a public high school. Will I incur a sin if I have to address my students by pronouns that don't match their biological gender? You're going to be legally mandated to do so. So if you're able to fight back, if you're able to, inshallah, hopefully we get there soon, where people are waking up now and they're saying, I'm tired of this garbage. We're going to go and we're going to petition as groups and say, we have a right to opt out from some of this stuff. Once we get to that point, it will not be allowed for you to do that. You need to do the opt out. Right now, there's no opt out. You will lose your job immediately, and you're being pressured and you're being forced to do this, and you hate it in your heart right now, but it's not sinful for you to go ahead and do that in the meantime. There are many youth here. Can you give them advice on how to interact with these people and difference between respecting them and not supporting them? Yes. So we respect all sorts of people because they're human beings. So if somebody is worshiping Jesus, it's one of the biggest sins. It's worse than the sin of homosexuality. But you still respect the person because they're a human being. But there's a difference between respecting someone and respecting their beliefs. If their belief is shirk, if somebody is worshiping shaitan, there's Satanists today. They're worshiping shaitan, you say, you know what? If I have my lunch and I have some extra, I'll still share some of my lunch with you. I don't care because you're a human being and I'm a Muslim, and that's good behavior. That's good akhlaq. But am I going to respect your belief if you're praying to shaitan? No. Am I going to respect that you're praying to Jesus? No. Am I going to respect that you are having a romantic relationship with someone of the same gender? No. But as a person, I'll share some of my lunch with you. As a person, I'll help you with your homework if you need some help. But I want to make sure I'm cautious about someone. There's two types of people. There's a type of person who simply just does their own thing and they're doing some bad haram behavior, but they're doing it in their own space. There's the other one who's making dawah to you every single day. You need to become an ally. I want you to come to the gay, straight alliance, whatever it is. I want you to come and draw rainbows. You need to support me. People who are making dawah to you every day, like missionaries, don't spend so much time with them because they're going to mess with you. So there's a different level of interaction you should have with the people depending on your personality and depending on their personality. How do you respond to a child that asks, why does Allah have a problem if someone loves someone? Well, it comes back down to the example that I gave of animals. Somebody loves their dog and they want to marry their dog. Would you be like, yeah, that's fine? No. People will still be like, something's not right with that, right? So yes, people may love something that's not good for them. And people may have some strange, weird desires in their mind. And when it comes to something like that, we need to stop and say, listen, it's not simply love is love and you do whatever you feel like doing. You need to realize
Allahu
that
Akbar,
this is not a
Allahu
normal
Akbar.
behavior and we should be careful. So we'll break for Isha, inshallah.